this one has. This one has. I think two's fine.
Two is fine. Yeah.
Let's turn this off. First one will be you. This. Oh, hang on. Everyone. Yeah. What's small?
All right, another time. Welcome to Halves Day 2. Teams will be presenting their progress updates and their plans for the rest of the semester in about 15 minutes. 5 minutes for questions. We are streaming, so everyone on the stream. And for everyone who is in the room, including the students presenting, the expectation is you are here for the whole session. So please stick around and give your fellow classmates your attention. With that, Monomon and Mark, you're up.
Good morning, we're Team Monomon MR, and our project is Mixed Reality Deck Down. Our instructor is Dave, and my name is Felicia. I'm the producer and UX UI designer.
My name is Yushi, and I'm in charge of rigging and animation.
My name is Chloe. I'm in charge of art direction and 3D art.
My name is Patrick. I'm the software engineer.
I'm Arthur. I'm the game designer and gameplay programmer on the team.
I'm Snow. I'm the VFX and technical artist.
For a short overview, our deliverable is a 2-player physical combat demo by using the latest mixed reality technology, and we're currently developing the experience in a room roughly around 20 by 20 feet, and it contains 2 to 4 pieces of furniture. And now I'll hand the microphone to Chloe.
Thank you, Felicia. So for the general pitch of our experience, we have 3 monsters of following type: water, fire, and grass. And us, players, are chosen entities with magical watch device, which allow monsters to channel their spiritual powers to us. Then you will choose your own monster to duel and collect souls from one another. To achieve this, we have 3 key design pillars: player versus player interaction, virtual interaction, and physical interaction. Now we will watch a short gameplay demo of what we have so far. As you can see, player 1 and 2 create and join the room. Then you'll see all these shared assets in the mixed reality space. Then they both tap the watches onto the magical scroll, and it slowly floats, unwraps, and then shows a drawing of our 3 monsters. Then it drops our 3 monsters in a Hanafuda card form. You choose a monster, tap the card onto the watch, and now you have the spiritual power of the monster. Then you battle. When the player makes a successful hit to the opponent will drop these things called souls. Then you'll send your monster to collect the soul drops, and that's how you win. Let's talk about one of our magical experience, our first encounter with our monsters. As we all saw, we have an unwrapping scroll as a start button. This not only shows the unfolding of our narrative, but also helps the players to dive into the world of fantasy very quick. We also have these 3 monsters in Hanafuda card form prior to syncing. After you choose your monster, you'll meet one of our following 3 monsters. From the left, Chochi, Nuki, and Cappy. As you can also see from our environment assets, we have a very bold and round shape languages with some outlines. Such guide for aesthetic directly derived from the traditional Japanese card game called Hanafuda. The design decision was made not only to save time on 30 art pipeline, but also to make it easier to read for players in the mixed reality room setting. Now we'll have Yushi to talk about another special feature of our game, watches.
Thank you, Chloe. So we are using a physical watch armature as our key medium for our player to physical interaction, which is this. And essentially, the fantasy behind this watch is that it is used as an instrument to channel the monster's power to the player. And the reality behind this watch is that it is used as a physical anchor for our user interface, where players can see the number of souls they've collected, their HP, and their mana. So essentially, we have this watch that allows us to communicate with the monster, but why is this communication necessary? This brings us to the question of the relationship between the player and the monster. And the fantasy behind this interaction is that the player and the monster have a symbiotic relationship. Essentially, the player gets challenged to a duel and needs to obtain power to win, and the monster wants to get stronger and needs to obtain souls in order to do so. So in terms of gameplay, the player will be able to use the monster cards to select which power they wish to wield by tapping and feeding the card to their watch. And then, in turn, the selected monster will transfer its power to the player, which will allow them to cast spells. Then, the player in return will feed the monster souls throughout the duel. And essentially, these souls are an energy resource for our monsters to get stronger, and monsters have a higher chance of obtaining souls if they help someone in a duel. So to explain how the role of souls works in gameplay, we will reference a player 1 and a player 2. So let's say player 1 casts a spell directed towards player 2. If player 2 gets hit by the spell, then souls will be released from their body and scattered randomly throughout the duel space. Then player 1 will be able to send their monster to feed on the souls that player 2 just released. As you can see, it's mutually beneficial for the monster and the player to work together to win the duel. So that's a bit about how fantasy is integrated into our gameplay, and now Arthur will talk about game design.
Thank you, Yushi. So let's talk about game design. What happened to the original card game pitch that we had? What happened to the turn-based system? Essentially what happened was that throughout the playtest, throughout the development, we realized that our players a lot of times focus a lot more on the physicality of the game, and yet taking turns, drawing cards, planning your phases sometimes really breaks the game flow and turns the player's attention away from the connection between you and the monster. So we have built this new system that we still inherit the mana system from card games, but they grow as the time goes, and more of all is that you get to make these choices to convert your valid hits with attacks into a win condition. Essentially, is that when you send out your monster, you expose them in danger, and what we'll need to do is use mana on attacks and blocks to really trigger more souls from your opponent and to defend your monster from danger so that they can collect the souls peacefully. So as we move on, how do we make this multiplayer experience possible? Let's have Patrick talk about Photon.
All right, thank you, Arthur. So the networking engine we use for our main projects will be Photon Fusion. Get it? Fusion? But yeah, so Photon Fusion makes it possible for two Quest headsets to network with each other and create a multiplayer experience. But network games are really hard to debug when creating, especially with Quest devices and headsets. So what we came up is a solution is to make a custom debug panel that's kind of like fixed to your armrest. So in game, we can kind of like see the debug logs, all the error messages in the console to see what's going on in debug, and then fix from there. Another big part for our game is co-location. So co-location is basically having multiple different players in the same physical space and enjoying the same virtual space and seeing the same virtual asset at the same position. This is done by shared spatial anchors that's provided by Meta, which is used through sharing the point cloud data that you see from one headset and then share it with the other headset. Once they sync with each other, you guys then can see the same virtual objects in the same space. But it's really hard for us to set this up at the beginning due to the lack of tutorial and documentation online. So what we did is we found out how to set it up correctly and then come up with the complete documentation that will be released at the end of this project that will be available to both ETC and people inside ETC and outside ETC if they want to develop co-location experiences. Also, another big part is testing and debugging in mixed reality. It's really hard for debugging multiplayer and testing it because every time we need to make a build and deploy it on the headsets. Also, you need to grab a friend or teammate to debug with you. Unless you have multiple heads or hands and wear two headsets at the same time, it's really hard for you to debug. So something we'll come up with is break down the components of our game. We divide the components into mostly single-player parts so we can test and develop and test on our own. And once those parts are good for the iteration, we put them together and test the networking components of it. Now, done with the technical parts of mixed reality, we'll have Chloe to talk more about the art direction.
So with all of these technical challenges that are specific to MR that Patrick have just mentioned about, we also needed some specific art direction catered towards our platform, mixed reality. As you can see, this is one of our assets. Every single one of our assets have hand-painted bounce light onto the bottom of the asset to create a more convincing world and to save performance power in lighting. But also by doing so, it weaves the world of fantasy and our reality a lot closer by making it look more realistic. Another fun art direction that we did was the style transfer of Hanafuda style. To achieve this look, we had two different methods, one being manually painting and outlining the texture in Photoshop, and the other way was to write a shader to outline the objects, so from any angle, each object will be perfectly outlined. Now we'll have Snow to talk about VFX.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. So except for the static art assets, VFX is also playing a very important role in our gameplay because this is the main method to attack in our game. So as you can see here, we have 3 different types of attacked VFX corresponding to 3 different types of monsters. And also, when the attack hitting the virtual and real-world object, it will both collide and generate collection effects. And also, if you notice, if you watch closely, you will find our VFX is also consistent with our art style. So after we integrate all the tech and art stuff into our game, we did several play tests and we found some problems. So the first problem is about safety risks. So for now, we just place our furniture randomly inside of a room, and some furniture are initially behind our players. So if the players didn't notice the furniture is behind of them, it will cause some dangerous situation. And the second problem is because we are now focusing on finish our core gameplay, so we are now lacking of some onboarding tutorials for players. So we didn't introduce too much about our fantasy world and the strategy to choose monsters. And also sometimes players are confusing with how to interact with their watch and how to use different gestures to trigger attack or defense. And the third problem is about our unbalanced gameplay for now. So for example, we have a player to use defense, shield to defense all the attack in front of them. So it will discourage players to move around the room and also hiding behind furniture. And this is not what we want. So based on those 3 different problems, our goal is to do future iterations. So first, we're going to balance our gameplay and also to design a proper room setup for players to move inside of a room and also in the safety situation, in the safety condition. And the second goal we want to make is to create an intuitive tutorials for players to join our game more smoothly.
Thank you, Snow. With all the feedback in consideration, our team has planned out 3 major milestones by the end of the semester. The first milestone is on week 8. We plan to implement the core PvP comeback gameplay. This includes 2 monster symmetric gameplay with a use of HP and mana to encourage players to move around and potentially interact with the physical objects. Additionally, we'll implement both physical objects that will be placed into environment. This will not only tie with our fantasy, but also has safety in considerations. By the end of week 8, we also aim to implement both virtual and physical interactions. This includes, but not limited to, the VFX that will be land on wall will be look different when they land on different surface in mixed reality, as well as explore the possibilities with using the physical watch to send out virtual monster instead of using multiple really complicated hand gestures. The purpose of this milestone is to prepare our team ready before the whole team head to GDC, and it also offers us opportunities to leverage the playable demo to make the trip more meaningful. Our second milestone will be on week 11, and we'll finalize a tutorial as well as a full PvP combat gameplay. This includes a selection of 3 monsters with asymmetric abilities as well as the defined winning conditions. Our team will use this milestone to prepare for playtest day to gather valuable feedback with the full gameplay experience. And our last milestone will be on week 13, and we'll shift our focus more towards documentation and potential iteration based on previous feedback. As a team, we would like to thank to everyone who have contributed to bring this project to the current stage. And for the final iterate, where project's mixed reality deck down, and our deliverable is a 2-player physical combat demo by using mixed reality. Our goal is to create a shared mixed reality demo with meaningful player-to-player, player-to-virtual, and player-to-physical interaction. Thank you, and now we're open to questions.
So you talked about the challenges of a build cycle to, deal with playtesting feedback, building it again, testing a new idea. How long does it take to do a build?
Well, usually for Unity, initial builds takes about 5 minutes when you first launch it towards the end of the day. But then after you just make minor modifications, usually it takes like 2 minutes to make another build. But it's just like the process is annoying of waiting 2 minutes, deploying onto the headsets and testing it out as well. A workaround that is having divided it into single player components so we can test it locally. But so for single players, we don't have to make a build and deploy it onto Quest. We can directly use a link cable connecting to the PC and then test it on your local machine.
I'm a little confused because your battle system, the rock, paper, scissors type format, seems that if 2 players are playing that choice, if I'm water and someone else is grass, I lose because grass is going to beat me all the time. Is the intent that this is going to eventually be 3 players, and that way you have a nice asymmetry with the 3 choices?
Well, first of symmetry, think about types. It's not really like grass will always be water, water will always be fire. It's more of the variety that will come in later. That's like we'll have different types of skills that you can use. So let's say fire maybe will be a bigger range of attack. Maybe grass will be something that's like you can have also another way of attack, just like different ranges of varieties of how to initiate the attack instead of like, like water's always gonna get rid of like be fire of that type.
I play too much Pokemon Go. So I assumed it was done. After the choice of monsters, that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But another thing related to like multiplayer that could potentially be a thing, because we adding in multiple players, adding into the same lobby. Either that's like being able to interact with the other players, or being also a spectator to see the mixed reality content in the same space.
Is the goal now to design gameplay experience that would work in a living room, or are you just focused on, you're not worrying about what type of room, you just want to arrange a room custom for this experience and kind of explore that? Which one are you pursuing?
Thank you, Mo. So we were glad that you asked that, because right now the direction that we're heading with in terms of asset generation is that hybrid. We're doing half of them for procedural generation and half of them as labeling specific assets to specific types of furnitures, such as spawn a tree for every chair. So in that sense, it could be played in any room. However, the example that we used in our presentation, the green screen room, it's more of an ideal room setup for current demo and current project to make the assets and everything look in coherent style. But yeah, the general direction is that it can be played in any room.
All right. Thank you, team.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to stand here to introduce our team. We are our Blues. And I'm Kira. I'm a producer, UX designer, and a graphic designer.
I'm Yawen. I'm the co-producer in the team, and also I do UX UI design and graphic design.
Hi, I'm Cassie, and I'm doing UX UI design, UX research, and also graphic design.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm in charge of UX research, UX UI design, and graphic design.
Hi, I'm Annie. I'm responsible for developing as a software engineer.
And I'm Angie. I'm the hardware engineer and an experience designer on the project.
This is Mo, our advisor, and our client is Deep Local. This is Sean and Jake. They guide us how to understand the client's perspective and providing prompts, and also give us feedback every week. This is Deep Local process. We follow this pipeline from the ideation to production. Let's talk about our project. Our insights from Gen Z. Gen Z, they are all about keep it real and no more pretending everything is perfect. And they are actually making sad cool. They are crying on TikTok and YouTube. And this is because Gen Z was born in tough world, and these guys are really creative and hopeful, but tired of the older routine, so they taking a stand. This picture is chilling in bed and soaking in fields. This is their way of saying enough to the constant household. That is the sad culture vibe. So we want to make a product that can elevate a personal space where Gen Z can tap into their feeling with music. And we also will send this fantasy product to the influencer that increase the brand appeal in marketplace. And this is our one-liner, watch the changing world pass by to the vibe of your music, allowing your sadness to let go.
So imagine that you're 17 again. You're a part of Gen Z, and you're heading home after a long day of school, scrolling a flurry of TikToks on your phone. It wasn't a particularly bad day at school, but it was a long one. You come back to your bedroom, and you close the door and sit in bed. Perhaps you can get into your feelings for a bit and listen to some music. You find that sad music helps you relax after a stressful day. You search sad on Spotify, ready to get into your feelings. The window right next to you activates. The light begins to fill your room as the rain begins to tap on the glass. The passing landscapes match your music. The mountains rise with the peaks of the music, and the valleys grow with the guitar solos. As the world passes by, your sadness passes too. You reflect on your life, your relationships, your life so far, and the future ahead of you. The sad music washes over you, and you are at peace. We are creating a fantasy product to be installed in the personal bedrooms of influencers that celebrate sadness by reacting to the vibes of their music and giving the user a space to reflect and let go. Here's some concept art reflecting the image of the product that we will be creating. It is a large window that will be installed next to the bedroom to allow the user to feel that teen angst of looking out the window on a school bus or being driven home.
So it's a single user experience specifically for influencer product review in a private space, preferably in the bedroom with the sad music on. So the influencer will receive a package from us and they will be able to schedule installation with our team. After setting up the walls and windows next to the bed, the influencer will then prepare their cameras for shooting. Once everything is settled, the influencer will sit by the window, turn on the sad music, and the window will start to show things like oceans and clouds passing by, simulating the experience of traveling in a vehicle. With the music and the scenes all together, the influencer will be fully immersed in emotion. When the music ends, so do the visuals. Then the influencer stop recording, edit the video, and upload them to social media.
To get insights and ideas for our project, we conducted user interviews and surveys. We got 57 Google surveys in total, targeting Gen Zs who follow at least one influencer on social platforms. 80% of the participants answered that they listen to sad music, and out of those 80%, most of them said they have the experience of listening to sad music in a vehicle. Also, if you look at the right side, you can see that approximately 48% were on their transportation and 37% were on their bedroom when listening to sad music. And this strengthens our idea of creating a window that turns your bedroom into a vehicle. To get specifically recommendations about our contents, we asked which aspect of music triggers your imaginations, and most of them answered lyrics, melody, and tempo. We also got recommendations about which aspects they would like to see in a visual, and it was interesting to find out that not only abstract art, nature, or city scenes, they also want to see scenes related to their past memories, such as childhood. Another interesting point was that they often feel like the process of feeling grief and sadness is very important and fully embrace the process, since sadness is a thing that will eventually pass away. We also conducted user interviews with 3 influencers who are actively creating contents on social platforms. It was a great opportunity for us to get advices about creating contents that could fully embrace the audience into the emotions that we intend them to feel.
Okay, so I will talk about our art direction. The content creation is really important in this project because we want to make our content can be more related to our audience and match the music they're listening to. During week 4, we explored different styles of art, and it's a mood board we made. We discussed with Deep Local, and we all agree that we should develop more on the collage art and also the digital paintings instead of the generative art because we feel these 2 directions are more emotional. So during week 5, the designers in our team developed different styles of art, and we got feedback from Deep Local that they want to see more delicate art. So during week 6, we explore on the stretch out scenes because we feel it can be more immersive and help our users better get into their mood. The client more satisfied with the picture one's direction. It contains abundance of content. So in the future, we will explore more on this direction. So we separate design elements on single layer and pass to our programmer, Annie. And Annie composes these design elements with music into Unity and let Annie to talk more about our software behind.
Thanks, Alan. In our project, we're creating an experience where users can connect their emotions by listening to sad music. To combine the music and visuals, we're using Unity game engine and audio frequency analysis in the soundtrack to make it happen. The reason we're using frequencies is simple. Different music parts have different emotional vibes. Low frequencies might sound heavy and introspective, while higher frequencies might feel joyful. We have frequency audio examples. So this is the low frequency range. And then there is the high frequency. In the game engine, we divide visual elements into distinct groups that correspond to the audio frequency ranges we've identified in the music. This division ensures that the scene aligns with the mood and intensity of the music being played. For instance, during intense music passages, we observe an increase in the presence of more vivid and visually engaging elements. For layers of elements, just like in real life, the background such as sky moves slowly while the foreground moves much faster. The speed is set for each group to provide a more immersive and realistic experience.
When beginning our hardware exploration, we wanted this project to not just be a screen on the wall. We wanted it to look and feel like a real window. So as we were exploring different ways to achieve this effect, we encountered Layered by John Mars. Layered literally uses 3 LCD panels with 1 backlight in the back, basically stacking 3 screens together. We discovered that this direction would not be really beneficial for our project, so we decided to go towards the Galactic Star Cruiser's infinity window directions, which uses a Fresnel lens to create the distortion effect. As you can see here, as I move my phone towards the Fresnel lens, it makes it look like there is depth in this window, that it's not actually just a screen back there. So I can look up and down, and it really does feel like there's something behind that window. As you can see, though, in the video, it causes great distortion. And this distortion is very distracting to playtesters, especially when sitting far away or from extreme angles. So we will be experimenting with different Fresnel lenses and sizes, varying the distance between the screen, the lens, and the user, and using indirect control to get the guest to be in the best viewing angle. How does these content direction and hardware achieve our emotional goals? So we're using negative space to represent longing and yearning in our landscapes, as well as using subtle reactivity to create a visual white noise that presents a space to relax and allows our users to reflect, as we found that our users reflecting creates more sadness within them, as well as using illusions with screens and lenses to create a distance from the world so that they can see the world pass by from far away, which helps bump up that sad music feeling.
We built a bedroom and a vehicle window in our project room for playtesting, and we got 18 participants, ranging from the age of 14 to 25. And we divided the playtest into 2 parts, one on testing the visibility of the window and one on the content that we want to put inside the window. And luckily, after each playtesting session, all of our participants have shown positive reaction to the settings, which is have a vehicle window next to the bed with music on. The setting provides them a safe feeling that allows them to relax and fully focus on their emotion. This has further proven the direction of our product can enhance the emotion that we want the users to immerse in. Moving on to more detail of the playtesting finding, most of our participants have mentioned enjoy city night drive and often feeling emotional at nighttime. So to simulate that scenario, we will try to use desaturated color, darker tone, and as well as incorporating emotion in our content. We also add their opinion on our window content. We ask them what do they like, enjoy most or resonate with most, as well as what do they dislike or resonate with least. And these are the answers that we got from them. And we did some analysis and draw on the conclusion that we want a more simplified and less detailed imagery that can be applied to a more general population. And we definitely will avoid element that causes anxiety.
So this is our completion schedule. Now we are at week 7. From week 7 to week 9, we will make progression of our content, installation, and software. From week 9 to week 13, we will try to finish the product, iterate on it, and do more play testing. And for the last 2 weeks, we will finalize it, shoot a product video with influencers. Thank you for your listening, and now we open to any questions you have.
I have a question about the use of frequency to map it to emotional content. Do you have research to indicate that that's a valid methodology? The research I've seen is often wave shape in terms of music. So can you help me out?
Yeah, the research actually shows that for the brains, different frequencies will stimulate their emotions, but there is not really concrete conclusion of like what frequency can stir what emotions.
I just need a little more on the emotional goal of the visual content. Is it supposed to be sad, be encouraging? What that last point about making visual content supporting the emotional goal. I get that the music is sad. What should the visuals be doing?
The visuals should be reinforcing both the longing and yearning of wanting to be out there with people, wanting to say, okay, this is sad music and I'm alone in my bedroom, I'm listening to sad music, I'm putting distance between myself and the world, as well as, you know, I had a thought and now it's gone. As well as creating the visual white noise to allow the user the space to reflect. We don't want it to be too distracting from the music as we want to put emphasis on the music. So we want to allow the user to think, listen to the song, and really get into the music. We don't want it to be too distracting.
Sorry, I don't even talk. Have you been play testing the visuals to see whether the effect you want to get at is there?
Yes, we have been. We play tested our first series of content direction. So we asked users, okay, which elements did you remember? Which elements stood out to you? Which elements did you really take you out of the experience? And then we found that sometimes when we also tested hardware, we were playing a YouTube video of just passing by car landscapes, and that also was found to be effective.
You mentioned a video at the end, and that's okay, that you're going to produce in the end. Who's the audience for that video?
Do you remember?
You said you're going to, at the end of your timeline, you're going to do some video with influencers.
The final video? The trailer for the project, do you mean?
Is that what it is?
Was
For like, we will like shoot a product video like with influencers. It's like to introduce our product and like to see like how they interact with our product. Yeah, like bring to our project room or like try to install in their room. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, good morning. We are Team Voxelberg and welcome to our Halves presentation. Our instructors are John Desser and Shirley Sotomarco. Our client is Sebastian Dubrow, and he's a professor from Department of Modern Languages. And this is our team. So our client needs is he wants a location-based AR game that reflects language and culture. So our deliverable and platform, it should be an iOS AR game. And we want to show the topic of culture merge, and we want people to interact with the real world. So our location, we picked Strip District because they have a diverse culture and they have street life over there. And our target audiences are college students in local Pittsburgh. This is potentially to be a teaching tool for our professor or for our client to bring to other places in the world. So it should be replicable. So based on all of these needs, we generated our first version of gameplay, but this is before week 6. On our first version, our player will play as an antique shop owner, and then they will search around the area for specific signs and then use their camera to scan them. And then a virtual item will pop up and they will unlock a piece of corresponding cultural stories behind it. And then we did a playtest last week, but we discovered some problems. The most important is there is a huge gap between when players scan the science and then collect those virtual items. So they get confused when something pop up on their screen, but it's not kind of related to their what they scanned. And the second is our narrative using the form of dialogue is pretty boring. Also, our client mentions the antique shop owner, this identity for our player is about the past. We want to focus more on the present. So we have like a pivot last week. And then Yuxin will talk about our new version of our gameplay.
Yeah, so based on our playtest result, we have came up with a new idea, which is a location-based AR game where users can use virtual postcards to share stories about cultural connections. So basically, players can create virtual postcards by taking pictures in certain locations, and players can exchange virtual postcards with virtual characters and other users. And the narrative will show on the back of the postcard. So we are inspired by the idea of post-crossing. So what is post-crossing in real life? It is a project where people exchange postcards with other people globally. So why we choose this idea? It is because instead of a sharp transition from the location to the item and the related story, there's no gap between the location and the postcard. And with the postcard, we can move on to the stories and items. And as we talked about antique shop before, it is more about the past. And the pictures we are taking for the postcard is more about the present, the current locations. And it is more about now. And with the back and forth of the communication between the postcard, the story will be gradually revealed to the users. And we can see from the pictures of the postcard, the address and the stamps, players can get a sense of multi-language and multicultural because those elements might came from different places in the world. And also, it is more replicable because we use mailbox as AR anchor for the AR interactions. And because mailbox is all over the world, which fits our client's need. So here is our demo video. So the player opens our app in the Strip District. The player goes to the map and they can see the location of the mailbox. The player will follow the map and find the mailbox. So when the player finds the mailbox, they can turn on the AR function and scan the mailbox. There will be a mascot pop up and chat with the player. The mascot will give the player a postcard that asks the player to take a photo for a certain location and reply to this postcard. So now the player is taking the picture of a church in Strip District. So then the player used the photo and replied to that postcard. And the player will receive another postcard from the sender, and the player can collect all of the postcards in the album. Yeah, and this is the summary of our gameplay. So next, Xixi will talk more about our narrative on the postcard.
Thank you, Yuxin. We already designed 3 complete stories for languages and culture, and it's all about the language and the cultural connection between Strip District and immigrants from Germany, Italy, and also Polish. We divided the narrative into 3 parts. First, the person will receive a postcard and basically just a mission of a background story and also a quest of taking a photo of what Strip District looks like right now. So the second column is the photo postcard that the player go to the Strip District and take photos and send something about what they thought about Strip District right now and send it back. And the third column is the third step. It's the player will receive a story postcard. And by these steps, the language on the postcard will reveal the story and the culture behind. And we'll use the third story. The story is about Italy immigrants, the story about Pennsylvania Macaroni Company, to go through the narrative flow. So the step one will be read the mission postcard. For example, when you open your AR app, walking on the strip, and go to a location or go to a mailbox near Pennsylvania Macaroni Company, you scan the mailbox, the mascot pop up and talk to you that there's a postcard in it. Go and take a look. So, and you zoom in the postcard, read the content, and find out there's an Italian immigrant talking about the missing Pittsburgh PAMAC, asking for news of what the PAMAC looks like right now. So why we designed this step is because we want to introduce a little bit of background to the player and also give mission of taking a photo. So if player follow our instruction and take a photo, for example, like me, I will record something about what I thought about PAMAC and also what look like what's around Strip District and what's around Pennsylvania Macaroni Company right now. And the goal of this step is to encourage exploration and also recording some thoughts during the exploration and enhance immersion, like giving the players a sense of you're actually talking to a person like in Italy or somewhere out there. The challenge would be players would have like self-generated content, and maybe there are some inappropriate or unrelated content pop up. So the solution will be we'll give some example responses, and also for the tech part, we'll have some content moderation tools. The final step will be receiving a story postcard. And in these steps, for example, in this story, the Giuseppe, the character, touched by a player's update, will share the story in his reply postcard about the memorable winter feast at PAMAC like several years ago. So the story will be gradually revealed by steps by steps. And in this postcard, the final postcard is a whole story. And the hidden cultures and the culture connection will be revealed. So that is the narrative flow. And Jim will talk about art.
Okay, hi, I'm Jim, and here is our art and technical art part. Yeah, and the first thing I want to introduce is our special art shader, the pop art shader, where we refer to the 1960s art style, and we will implement this material on our mascot of mailbox and other objects in the scene. Yeah, and as you know, the pop art style is that it with sharp shades and the very stylized spots on the objects. Yeah, and we created these shades based on a series function to make the edge between the dark side and the bright side sharper. And we also replace the shades with spots created by a noise texture. Yeah, and we allow the designer to edit the parameters, including the brightness, the softness, and the size of the spots to create various effects based on the same shader. And the second thing I want to talk about is our Eagle Vision system. Well, to help our player to find the target object, we use this shader, we use a custom rendering pipeline with two cameras switched between each other. Yeah, and the player can use the custom render pipeline feature to see the objects through the wall with highlighted effect. And as for our 3D art part, we will modeling the mascots with Blender, and then we will use Maya to do the character and facial rigging. Yeah, and after that, we will export it to Substance Painter to create realistic texture on it. Yeah, and this is our previous photogrammetric pipeline. We used it in our last iteration. Yeah, we created it by photo and we reduced the distortion by dealing with UV, and it has better effect than the current AI modeling technology, and we can use these objects in our scene and collector room. This is the introduction of our pipeline, and the next part is our programming and tech part of Tony.
Thank you, Jim. We'll talk about the technical part. So these are the things we have done for the gameplay. We have implemented some scriptable objects in the game so that we can allow the game designers to do the researches and then add them into the game separately, working from with the programmers. And we have also implemented a map, an interactive map that is based on the Niantic Lightship SDK. So that supports some basic interactions, just like a pen or scroll, as what you can see in the picture. And for the interactions, we have finished implementing the basic user interface interactions, navigations, as well as AR detection, which is also based on the Niantic Lightship. So as you can see in the picture, you can just turn on your camera and scan your reality, and just click on the interactables, so you can trigger some events, some interactions, such as just like take a photo, something like that. For the framework, we have implemented some base C# classes, which includes interactables and explore pages. We're making this in the base classes because we think that for our game, the interactions is a basic thing. So we're making this basically a base class, so we have more classes that can inherit from that. And we have finished some managers like game managers, UI manager, camera manager, sound manager, and input manager. For the AR interactions, we have done some AR interactable, which is also inherited from the interactable base class. And we have also tested our projects on iOS and Android, and they have been successfully built. We have been documenting our documentation in LaTeX, and we are making this documentation for mainly two purposes. For our current developers, we are using this documentation as a naming convention and just like a folder usage, so we can keep them as a kind of like an agreement on how to use projects. And we are also shipping this game not only as a game, but also as a tool, so that supports the client to replicate this game in another place in the world if they want. So they can just follow our clear instructions on our documentation about like how to use the prefabs and as well as the APIs that we are including in our game. And I hand to.
I'm going to talk about our next plans. So this is our production pipeline. We're going to start producing in the next few weeks. We're going to divide our team into tech and art. For the tech, we're going to establish a pipeline based on the Niantic Lightship ARDK. For the art, it's a basic modeling, texturing, rigging animation texture pipeline. For the timetable, we're going to have two main play tests. The first play test will happen at the end of week 9. For that, we'll capture most of the core function and 80% of the art. For the next game play test, it will happen at the end of week 11. We will capture a better art and VFX for player to better understand our interaction. To give a summary of our game, we're a location-based AR game in Strip District, Pittsburgh. Players will switch virtual postcards to share stories about cultural connections. Players will use AR to find locations, read mission hints, create and send postcards, and receive postcards with story on it. Now, thank you very much. We're open to Q&A.
I was glad you mentioned at the very end that it is a tool. You mentioned that at the beginning and then at the end said a little bit about how it's a tool. I would like to hear a little bit more about that. Are these written instructions the tool, or is there an interface to that it can allow the client to add more stories, more culture? And how and when will you be play testing that tool?
Thank you for asking. So we're shipping this game as well as our game projects, and we are shipping our documentation as well. So you can follow the documentation for adding the prefabs as well as the scriptal objects for how to add more pieces into the game, as well as like how to add another position or just like replicate this game in another place in the world. So basically, that's how this game works as a tool as well.
Given that you're trying to create this exchange of postcards, and one of your problems is that they might not be responsive enough, have you looked at using generative AI for the postcard texts?
Great question. For now, we have like a systematic, like we pre-designed all the contents for now. But if we have like more needs, we will consider AI-generated contents, definitely, yeah. More questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Hi guys, we're Team Moonsters. Welcome to our half presentation. A quick introduction to our team. I'm Meng. This is Play, Jason, James, Lucy, and Bonnie. Our instructors are Shirley and Scott. Our clients are the Moonshot Museum, Mike Hemsey, the manager of learning and programs of Moonshot Museum. Our target audience will be middle school students, and our potential experts are engineers from the astrobotic technology. Our project is a VR game of NASA's Viper mission designed to spark interest in the space industry among middle school students. Besides that, we also want our game to be immersive and fun. We also want our project to be portable for field trips and school tours, and also scalable for future development due to the client's need. We also want to educate our players about the Viper mission. So you might ask, what is the NASA's Viper mission? In late 2024, through an innovative public-private partnership, the Astrobotics Griffin lander will deliver the lunar rover Viper to the moon's south pole to find potential ice and water in permanently shadowed craters. This mission will also help to determine the landing site for the first woman and first person of color on the moon in NASA's subsequent mission. We did some research on the mission before commencing the development, including the Astrobotics Payload User Guide, the Handbook of NASA's Viper, and attending live watch parties during the building of Viper. We also did research about the VR games and space games. We visit the Moonshot Museum during week 2, a place that offers both fun and educational experiences. The museum shares the same location as Astrobotic Technology, which is the place that developed the Griffin lander for landing the Viper on the moon. The red side is the installation location of our game. Next, James will jump more into the design of our game.
So in our game, the player will be playing as the AI that is controlling both Griffin and Viper, and through working with the in-game control center narrator, which is guiding the experience, the player will complete the mission of both mapping the moon surface and also searching for water ice. So our experience will be played in 2 scenarios. One is the on-site museum field trip, and the other one is in school. So our experience is designed for 2 players with like 2 audience, and then with the competitive element between the 2. And there will also be a projector with both gameplays projected on, so the audience will be able to see. So this is our storyboard. So the players start with an intro animation, which will be narrated by the control center narrator. And then during the final stage of the landing process, the player will be able to control the Griffin to land safely onto the moon. And then after that, the Viper, which is the rover, will come out of the Griffin, and the player will have the controls to control Viper to reach these checkpoints on the moon, which is going to be our first mission, that is mapping the surface of the moon. And then also we have this exploration areas, which is related to the other mission of Viper, which is the discovering water ice. And on these exploration points, the player will be able to use the spectrometer to search for ice. And after that, the player will enter the shadow area, which was mentioned before. That would be basically doing the same thing, but with the limitation of battery life. So this is our landing video.
Initiating GNC process.
So on the top left corner, you can see that is the view from the VR, the player view, and then in the middle is the actual environment. So there's the Griffin slowly landing down, and then the player control it with the tilting control and also the speed. Yeah. And this is the exploration part. Here you can see the player also have a control panel that can control the rotation of the rover and also the direction where the rover is moving towards. The lever will just control the speed of the rover. And on the top right corner, there's a camera view, which is going to be detecting the water ice on the surface, and then by pressing the button, you can activate the spectrometer. Okay.
All right. Next, I'll go into the details of our Griffin landing part. So right as our game starts, player will be seeing a 3D animation of Griffin flying towards the south pole of the moon. There will also be background music and narrative explaining the mission to players to get them more engaged in the entire progress. After the animation completes and Griffin approaches the landing area, player will be teleported to the landing site to navigate and guide Griffin to land safely onto the target area. This would involve controlling tilting angle, speed adjustments, and managing limited fuel supplies. And the entire control system for this part is divided into the following parts. The hologram sphere on the left is the rotation control for Griffin. Players can adjust the tilting angle and horizontal velocity of Griffin by touching the sphere with their hands. The lever in the middle is for controlling the force from the main engine. By utilizing it, players can decelerate Griffin. However, this will consume fuel, and player would have to plan wisely to not use it up too fast. The side monitor on the right is a simulation of the camera attached to the real Griffin, which takes a screenshot every 2 seconds to help Griffin and player land precisely onto the target area. Besides our landing control, several landing physics functions are also implemented to make everything more realistic. Our vertical and horizontal landing velocity are calculated from the moon gravity and engine propulsion, and adjusted based on user feedbacks during playtests. To create visual feedback for showing that players are landing at high impact, we also added a terrain deforming system that creates a pit every time player hits the moon's surface with a large velocity, which is also shown in the right.
So I'm going to talk about the Viper exploration part. This is our map for the Viper exploration. As you can see, the player starts from the left and goes through the checkpoint 1 and exploration area 1 as a warm-up of what's coming next. Then after going through checkpoint 2, player goes into the exploration area 2. This is the shadow area which contains several potential locations of ice. Player can explore freely by themselves, but they will need to keep in mind of the battery life of Viper and manage their way back to the sunlight successfully. This is the current setup of how we control Viper, as you briefly saw in the previous video. The left sphere is to control the direction of Viper's moving. The center sphere is to control the Viper's self-rotation. The lever is to control the speed of the Viper, and the right button on the right side is to scan the surrounding with the spectrometer. Also, there will be an extra screen shows the perspective from Viper's camera. It would provide more information than the actual surrounding environment the player could see. For example, we could only see where the potential area of ice would be through this camera view. After locate where the potential ice is, the player could hit the red button to scan the area. Then they can check the spectrum map to see which element exists in the location and determine if there's ice or not. So that's all for the Viper part. Here's an overview of the development progress we have right now. We have already finished the landing part, so our plan would be keep polishing it. And for the exploration part, we have built the prototype of it, and we are going to add more content in the future.
Okay, so now I will briefly discuss some of our progress and highlights. First, on the technical side, considering that our clients want to customize something of our game in the future, so we developed some highly customizable scripts. For example, with this controller script, you can just modify values like speed without any programming knowledge. Additionally, these scripts are portable. And on the other side, this is a control panel for controlling Griffin and Viper. And this is a fact of the holographic projection. It retains the virtual Griffin and Viper's appearance features on the control panel. This ensures that players will not be confused by the real lunar rover. And moreover, it allows players to immediately recognize that there is a certain connection between the virtual hologram and the real object. As players need to know data like speed, angle, and the remaining view of Griffin and Viper, so we designed a simple UI display appearing as a hologram in their view. And this is the model and the materials of the Viper. We strictly follow the real design of Viper, such as Viper's wheels and stereo axle, in order to facilitate that we can make Viper's animation later. And this is the terrain of our lunar environment. And these are the textures of the moonland. As for sound, we have some vocal footage now, and in the future, we will do more of two types of vocal footage. The operator's narrative voice, which will be used to guide our players, and the sound effects, which will be used to give players some feedback on the interactions.
So next, I'll be talking about the playtesting. So we have already had 2 formal playtests, with the first one being the playtest, which included students from both main campus and ETC. And second, we also have playtesters from the middle school students playtest day, which are the perfect audience for our game. And we also casually ask ETC students to test our games in our project room. So we did a few iterations. One of the major one is previously in the landing part, the lander will be very further away from the player and the surface. So the player needs to really look out to find them. And the rotation control is also less obvious to the player. So we changed it to a much closer and slower landing process, so that player can actually control with more precision. So after this modification is applied, we found the player found this process to be more easy to follow. Another iteration we did is we initially tested with Unity default hand gesture detection. However, this is way too complicated and not easy to adjust for our project. And after considering we're only gonna use the hand gesture, the fist gesture in our game, so we changed it into a much simple solution and allow more flexibility for our project. And another one is we initially did prototype for player can also control the lander to orbit around the moon, but we found it to be very confusing for the players, and we changed it to direct animation. In the future, we also asked the physics department, and they have an outreach program for middle school students, and so they will have middle school students to come every week. And we can ask them for play testing. We also ask the Astro Club, which are also willing to play test our game. This is the future schedule of our project. So in the following weeks, we'll be mainly focused on the exploration part, including implementing the function of mapping and camera for Viper and border eyes investigation. And we'll also plan to test VR performance. And after the final presentation, we'll be waiting for the actual launch of Viper mission in November this year. And this is a summary of our project, and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
So
So from the research you did, what about exploring the moon is exciting, and how did you include that into your project?
So exploring the water ice will be help human to build Earth's moon economy. So also will be the initial step of us to step into the Mars. And specifically for Viper mission, we're trying to find the water ice. So water will be a very essential resource for building the base in the moon, things they can use for be used for the resource for astronauts, and also use as the fuel for since you can decompose water into hydrogen and oxygen. So hydrogen can be used as a fuel, and oxygen can supply oxygen in the moon base.
Yeah. So during our playtest, so we were playtesting our Griffin landing part before. And then during that, a lot of players was like, I really want to do the controlling the rover and using the machinery and like the functions of the rover to like search for things. So I think one of the most interesting thing for the people is to explore what the rover itself is capable of and how it's gonna adapt to the moon surface, and like what function is directly connect to what kind of mission the Viper has.
Thanks, James. Maybe I missed this. Is this project still going to be deployed in the little mini space theater at the Moon Museum, or is it going to be touring around to middle schools?
So there's two scenarios. One is the experience. So the field trip ones is the students coming to the museum, and this experience will be played in the theater, which will have like the projector, and we are designing it for two players to be able to play at once.
Okay.
But
can I ask about that? Because you didn't really talk too much about the affordances of the theater itself with the screen and how people are going to interact in the space. And also, I'm wondering, are you going to be able to play test in that kind of unique location or a simulation of it, so you can get a sense of how people are going to watch the experience in addition to playing the experience?
So currently, what we're doing to like kind of make it seems like the projector view is, so we often have a few playtesters together and one person is playing, and then the other players will be able to see it on just the computer. We don't have the projector, but we have the computer as the view for the audience.
Okay. Are you making sure it's fun for the viewers as well as the player?
We are trying to do that. So one of the main thing is during the exploration, there's this shadow part for exploring the water ice and finding a resource and all that. That is the main part that we want the player, like the other audience, to be like kind of cheering or like guiding the VR player from what they see. Yep.
I can also add to this part. So as you can see from the control panel of the movements, there's like a lot of different controllers, and we also gonna be display some a lot of information. So the single player might not be able to notice all the information coming from the environment and not able to control like very fast to the critical points. So the audience might be able to help them to make more decisions in the game.
Is there a conversation you're having with the player around AI, or is that just instructional? You're the AI controlling?
So the players is acting as the AI, and then you have a narrator who is the operator from the Earth who will also be communicating with the player or the AI.
Basically, so the first intro animation part is basically going to be, the narrator is basically going to be talking about the basic scope of this mission, like what the mission is about, and also who you are. The reason why we make the player the AI is because you have so many controls towards these machineries, but in reality, most things are like automatically done, so that's why we did this.
I guess really quick follow-up to Jonathan's question. Are you going to have a separate view for the audience, or are you just showing the VR view?
So we're just showing the VR view.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. We are the game pre-production team, Studio Platypus, and our game is called Dungeon Museum. So our members are Sai, Ryan, Jia, Yihua, Yue, and Harry. Our faculty advisors are Chris and Ricardo. And our subject expert is Steve Garvin. He is the senior creative director of Scopely Games, and it's one of the U.S. Leading mobile game companies. And today we would like to talk to you about pre-production goals, game overview and example game loop, free-to-play game features, art and narrative, and what we have accomplished so far. And first of all, our pre-production goals have two parts. First, we want to design a free-to-play mobile game. Second, we want to make a playable gray box demo that demonstrates the X of the game. So what is the X of the game? The X feature that we're referring to is the core game feel and loop that makes the game different from the other game. It's also the most fun and juicy parts that keeps you playing. To help visualize in our slides, we will show if the parts are design parts or demo parts or both. So next, let's talk about our game. Our game consists with two parts, dungeon and museum. So at night, the player will explore different dungeons to get the different treasures. And at day, the player will run an abandoned museum which hosts and sells the treasures. So here is an example loop of our game. First, the player going to the dungeon, fight with the dungeon guardians, and find the chest which contains different legendary weapons. And then the player bring those weapons back to the museum. And in the museum, they have three choices to deal with the weapon. First, they can choose to upgrade their weapon for their further dungeon exploration, or they can display the weapon in the museum for the daily revenue, or they can sell the treasure to the bidders for the higher gain. So what is our game X feature? What makes our game unique is that we have the maneuver-oriented, fast-paced first-person combat, plus collecting treasures and treasure management.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about the free-to-play feature. This is really what sets us different from a lot of the path that previous teams follow. This is different from making an indie game or educational game. It's designed to make profit from player playing the loop. So just before we talk about the design, this is what free-to-play game is mostly about. It's obviously free-to-play. Player doesn't pay upfront for the game. They pay for the resource while playing in the game. Second, there's no ending, which means there's no a linear narrative. We have to provide the service to be ongoing. Third, most of the games provide daily missions, which encourage the player to come back every day to play the game. And fourth, the game is designed for retention, which means it's designed for the player to come back to play for months or even years. So this is what we're designing. We're designing first a very short loop for the player, which is meant to be a 10 to 15 minutes of like a play session. A second, progressional reward. You always want to reward the player with progression. That means it's weapons, armors, different maps, or just leveling up. Third, of course, the X feature of the game. We want to have a fast first-person combat that requires the player to dash around and then maneuver the space. And fourth, we want to give player a lot of options for their personal goals. So these goals include whether they want to collect weapons, they want to do upgrades, they want to decorate the museum, or they just want to go explore more places. These goals are personal goals, and they can always like set their own goals. Let's say if I'm collecting something and I don't want to do that anymore, I can always switch to another thing. But I know we're saying a lot of things. We're not making them all because reality doesn't give us the chance. And now we sort of cover about our design, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we're actually making as a demo. So we're making first generally a game loop that demonstrates everything here. First, a feature-complete first-person combat. That's gray box. That shows the X feature well, so it feels good to combat the enemies. Second, an interactable UI that allow you to craft your weapons and then feel the progression. Third, a customizable museum object layout, so you can place the objects in the museum space, decorate it as you want, and then sell them. So yeah.
So next up, we're going to talk about game settings and art. So our game is set in a medieval fantasy world. In this world, player plays as an experienced treasure hunter who hunts ancient artifacts in ancient dungeons protected by ancient guardians. As you can see on the right, we got some concept arts for our environment and our protagonist. Next up, there are some NPCs concepts. So right now, the king gave the player an abandoned museum to store these ancient artifacts and appointed a co-manager, Evelyn, as you can see on the right, to run the museum together with the hunter. And here we got some concept art for our guardians or the enemies in our game. So as you can see, there are different elements. We got wood guardians, we got the environment sketch, and we got some fire guardians. Different enemies are going to be spawned in according elemental biome and backgrounds. So I know this is a lot, but in the final deliverable, we're probably going to make 2 to 3 enemies just to keep it within our reach.
Next, we're going to talk about the art style and game tone. For now, we're making the mid-core and serious game. And here we have some sketches for our co-manager, Evelyn, who is going to run the museum with the player in the game. And this is the early sketch for our protagonist, who is the treasure hunter in the game. And next, we have some more detailed sketches for our protagonist and also as other NPCs. And last, we're going to talk about the ancient dungeon environment explorations. So with our intention to create a world of element power, we're trying to create some dungeons that were possessed by different elements. So as you can see, we have some like wood and water, and other themes we have like explorations. And this is the guardians in the dungeons. This is some like sketches. So also like following our intention to create element powers, we have different guardians that have different powers of elements. We have like wood and ice, fire guardians right now. And last, we're going to talk about a tool that we're going to use. It's called Smack Studio. So this tool, we're going to use it on the animation of our enemy. So basically, the first thing you need to do is like to draw a 2D image and import it into the Smack Studio. And then in the tool, you can rig it, and the tool will help you automatically turn this into a 3D model, and then you can do animation on it. So that's all for our arts part.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. So this part is about what we have so far in aspect of both in the design and the demo. And here's the first thing, the core loop. So we know that our games kind of have like 2 really separate systems. So the first thing we're going to figuring out is how these two separate systems working together. So for these two blue box, it's like the two goals that we'll always keep in mind that the player will keep going throughout the gameplay. So for the museum side, which is getting a higher status, and on the dungeon side, which is explore more and more interesting dungeons and kill many enemies. So at the museum side, if the player have a higher status, it can help to unlock more and more interesting dungeons for player to explore. And on the dungeon side, if you explore more and more dungeons, you can get many rare trophies, different trophies. It can help to the museum to help you get a higher status. And next, it's the player one flowchart. And here's two examples, and this is the first one, which is the player one getting stronger throughout the game. So how the player to get it? There's two ways. First one is directly exploring the dungeons and getting the trophies in the dungeons and getting better weapons. And another thing is more stable, which is playing with our crafting system to gather some materials from the dungeon and upgrade his current weapon to be a better one. And second one is to getting richer. So how to get richer is there's two ways, which is to do some daily missions and daily revenue has a stable income, or also to sell those trophies you gathered you don't want or you wanted to make a big money. And here's the progression curve. We defining the axis value is the DPS the player will expect it throughout the different stage of the game. So you can have, so the player generates will have a generally going up with the little bit fluctuations, but finally we're getting stable. And here's the example of our design for game economy. Just to have a zooming of one example is player can use the gold to buy some, to upgrade the treasures or to repair some treasures he gathered in the dungeons. And the gem is some decisions about our monetization decisions into the game because we are making it free to play. And next, welcome Yihua to talk about the combat design.
All right, next up is our combat design. First, I'm going to talk about our combat philosophy. So, like we said earlier, our combat is going to be focused on maneuver-oriented, fast-paced combat, and we want to keep our players on their toes. So we want them to keep moving. So first, we got our player attack and dash loop. So basically, whenever an enemy attacks, the player can dash, and during dashes, player can trigger a slow-mo, which the player can choose to attack the enemies or evade enemy attacks. And next up, we got player stamina and armor, which these two follows a very similar pattern. So basically, whenever the player dash or attack, the player can consume set stamina, and then after the player waits for a while without using dashes or attacks, their stamina bar will begin to recharge. And armor is pretty similar to stamina. Whenever the player gets damaged first, the damage will be conducted on the rechargeable shield armor first, and then after the player doesn't get damaged for a while, the armor will begin to recharge. And next up, we can talk about UI and UX.
So this is our museum UI UX looks like. Our commander will standing on the left side of the museum, and if you click her, she will show you the request. And on the top right of the museum, you can see there is a bidding zone. And if you click the treasure you placed here, you can see the bidder's information, and you can choose which bidder you want to sell. And it will show you how much money and status you earn from them. And on the bottom right of the museum, there is a Start Dungeon button. If you click that button, you will go to the map. And in the map, you can choose which dungeon you want to go in. And after you choose the dungeon, you can see the dungeon information on the left side of the equipment panel. And you can choose which items and weapons you want to bring into the dungeon. And then you click the Start Dungeon button again to explore the dungeon. And next, we will show you the combat demo. So the player has the ability of dash and attack, and also the player can do the dash attack, which will have a different animation with normal attack. And there are some dungeon guardians here. They will chase you and attack you. And we encourage players to use dash to avoid the guardians' attack and find the timing to attack the guardians. And you can open the chest and you will get some treasures from here. And we have some sound effects to make the combat more intuitive. So next is our timeline after half. So in week 10, we will finish our dungeon feature and start doing our museum UI. And in the week 12, we will do the finish our museum feature and prepare for the playtest. And in the week 13, we will finish our development and prepare for the soft opening and final. So in summary, our team will make a game design document which includes all of our design, and we're also gonna make a playable gray box demo which demonstrates our Game X feature. So thanks for your listening, and now we're open for questions.
So pre-production is notoriously difficult to actually validate and test, and I'm kind of curious, how are you iterating and kind of like testing your game ideas to figure out if the game will work and be good?
Thank you, Dave. So the question is, how do you test to make sure it's good? Right now, I would say we just started making the demo from starting last week, because we focus a lot of our time on really creating the system of this game. But our plan going forward is we are constantly testing with students that's on tour with Anthony, and we're going to playtest sessions to try to find the target audience, which for our game is around 16 to 25-year-old. And we're just gonna test them and see how it plays out. We so far have done one playtest session with, I think, a couple of middle school students. And so far, they have they talked about some of the elements that we're designing towards. So we're in the right direction there.
I'd never seen a player want flowchart before. Where did that idea come from?
Basically, this idea is coming from the feedback from our subject expert. He wanted to because we previously show a bunch of systems, but the client saying with the feedback of, okay, how this system really meets the player's need. Yeah. So we're doing in a reverse way, okay, so what the player want, so okay, the player want to get richer, so we're doing in a reverse way to connect the player's want and the system we design. So that's how the player want chart's coming out.
So did Scopely suggest that specifically, or was it something you guys came up with?
I think it's just our interpretation from their feedback, our understandings.
Great, thank you very much.
Hey, so it seems like you're making a lot of really good design decisions here, and I'm impressed by a lot of them. I'm wondering about the decision to make the protagonist kind of your stereotypical gruff, stubbly, masculine guy, and his assistant being a kind of conventionally attractive, thin female woman. Are you trying to lean into the commercial aspect and selling this to 16-year-old boys, or are there maybe more interesting choices you could make?
Thank you for catching that. It's very intentional, even though it's not necessarily the right thing to do, but that's how the commercial market is set up that way. And we made a lot of intentional decision on how the character look, and we have more graphic ones, but we're not using them anymore.
How are you making the dungeons, I think I read, or you said they're going to be more unique or more interesting? How is that?
Thank you, Charles. So before we answer that question, I do want to clarify, we have two parts of the game. The thing that we're designing, first a grand overall design with all these different dungeons. And the other one is the demo, which we're not going to do different themes because it's a gray box experience. We're focusing on the combat itself, how it feels kind of going against the enemies. If we have time, we'll theme it up a little bit, but right now we're thinking like in terms of design, we're thinking different elements means different elemental weapons, different attack from the enemies, and then just overall visually, it's different to signify that there's a progression in the game. Like you start from like normal generic dungeon, and then let's say move on to a fire one, which means that you have progressed in the game.
A little bit add-on is on the dungeon design is only in the design aspect. We're thinking of the dungeon can be randomly generated, but we get a feedback of fully randomized is meaningless, will frustrate the player experience. So currently we are focusing on to figuring out the fun rules set to have a randomized the fun to play with dungeons. So in the demo, we probably not really have a time to include in this. So in the demo, we are create our handmade dungeons with a bunch of the set we have made it.
Thank you all.
Hi everyone, we're Aware Bio, the animation production team. I'm Stephanie, this is Ryan, this is Z, this is Mia, Iran, Jiaxing, and Ayaka. So John and Ruth are our instructors and Ricardo is our consultant, and this is our team. So first of all, let's take a look at our project overview. So we're creating a 3D animation tailored for the panoramic screen and 3D stereo glasses in Cavern. Our story draws the inspiration from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Why are we using the panoramic screen and 3D stereo glasses? We want to make the best of these features to create a more immersive watching experience, which also brings out one of our top challenges and goals for this semester, to design around the tech. So these are the challenges we're facing and the solutions. So we're using the panoramic screen, so the significant camera is very easy to trigger the audience's motion sickness. So we would want to avoid the rotation of the camera and the vertical direction. People get lost with their focus on the large curved screen, so we would want to make use of the lightings, the vignette, the leading lines, and the stereo audio system to guide the audience's attention. In addition, there's a distorted feeling of the distance brought by the panoramic screen, so we're making use of the referencing objects when it comes to the asset composition. And lastly, the resolution issue for the 3D stereo glasses, thanks to the tech team at ETC, we came up with a solution to render out the visual for each eye first, and then layer these visuals together in the post-processing software. So we received some feedbacks during the quarter, and we made some iterations. First of all, the storyboard lacks the vision of the motion outcome, so we added more specific motion cues to the storyboard and developed the animatics accordingly. We were also suggested to implement more interactive content, so we added extremely close shots of the monster at the closing scenes and more camera movements. And lastly, pay attention to the storytelling. We want to make the backstory make sense, so the whole team is reasoning the backstory behind every props in the environment. And we also are directed the changing textures and appearance of the props to indicate the time lapse. So next we will talk about the progress update, and Mia will talk about the storyline and narrative.
So our story is based on the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein original novel. And the story, which is a doctor who creates a monster using different body parts from dead bodies. And in our story, it will start with several bodies and organs, and then the doctor collects different body parts step by step. This will be shown from time-lapse animation, and then on a rainy night, the monster will be brought back to life after the doctor pulling the switch and all the electricity goes through the monster. And instead of telling the story from the doctor's point of view, we developed a version of that a monster have consciousness and witness the whole process he is being created. So in our animation, you're going to see the camera from third-person perspective, but you will hear the voiceover of the monster talking about how he feels the whole process and how he felt about life. So this is our part of our storyboards indicates some of the camera movements and animations. We iterate several versions of the best fitting the carbon screen and creating the immersive storytelling. Here we're going to show the animatics of our animation shown in Carven, and along with our storyboards, this is not the final version. This is only a test to see how our camera design, environment assets, character assets, sound design work together.
When did I first realize I was alive? The first light that came into my eyes? The first time I heard something? Was someone calling me? The first wisp of consciousness that drifted in the darkness, the nothingness. Or was it the moment I felt the alternating warmth and cold of the fluids around me, swirling, wrapping, embracing me? Rebirth felt like an eternity. Will new life feel the same? I watched my body being constructed, step by step, as if I was witnessing a grand ceremony ushering in my new life. What I used to be has gone, and I now anticipate the sweet unknown. I hope my rebirth has been blessed. I remember the rain pounding frantically on the windows. The thunder striking. The lightning breaking through the sky. But I was fading. As the electric pulses surged through the stitched-together cadaver, my consciousness flickered into existence. I felt an abrupt jolt that threw me into a realm of sensory overload. My new life has begun.
So that's is just animatics we have so far. It's only contains some very basic transform animation and the camera movements, but it gives us a sense of the whole story and the direction we're going. So now we're going to see some scenes overview to have a more detailed and to view a sense of the environment and all the settings from different angles. And Ryan's going to talk about our pipeline.
So let's talk about our pipeline for this animation project this semester. And our pipeline is quite similar to the traditional animation pipeline, but catered to the skill sets of our team members. And we starting from the left, as you can see, we start with storyboarding and the concept art inside Photoshop. And based on them, we started doing the gray boxing inside Maya and Blender, which will be then imported into Unreal Engine for environment layout and animatic. And based on the gray boxing, we started doing the modeling and sculpting inside Maya and Blender, as well as Marvelous Designer and ZBrush. And since we have a character for our animation, we are going to do the rigging and also the animation inside Maya as well. And for the texture part, we are using the Substance Painter and Substance Designer. And alongside, we are doing our VFX inside Houdini plus Unreal Engine. And everything will be combined inside Unreal Engine for final rendering. And we are using Perforce for version control since we have so many artists working on the same project in the same room. And also we are going to working between the cavern and also our project room constantly, so we are also in need of version control. And if time allows, we are going to do the color correction inside DaVinci before we do the final composition inside Premiere. And since our sound design is going to be finished inside Audition, and everything is going to be combined to the final 3D animation inside Premiere. And next, we'll talk about some environment development stuff.
Here's some of our initial environment concept design. On the left are the references we collected for interior layout. And based on that, we created this asset list and asset scale, which basically shows how each asset is compared to human figure. And on the bottom are some several iterations of our floor plans. We finally decided to make it a 2-floor structure with a tank, with a tank inside of the tower. And here's an established shot of how the tank is in the tower inside the lab. And there are also some other references of other props in our environment, such as the heat generator, the tank, and so on. And Z will talk about the 3D assets.
So based on our 2D artist reference environment sketch and the assets we found in the online, and we create a library of 3D assets. And as you can see, here's our large assets, and we'll be playing very important role in our animation. And these assets will be able to quickly help our project to build an environment for testing. And here's some small assets, but it's also very important in our animation, as you can see. And all the assets still in a white model stage, but we're gonna build a detailed texture in the future, and we hope to see the complete highly detailed at the end.
Let's talk about some technical side of our environment development. So we first introduced the concept of modularity. As you can see, we are creating modular asset kits to let us artists to have freedom assembling the assets as well as playing them around all over our environment. And currently we have 2 asset kits. One is for the jars that contain the body parts, and the other one is the water pipes. And we also have 2 sets of materials, one for the wall and one for the floor, for the others to paint around the environment. And we're also using the procedural generation tools to help fasten our development. We are using this one as an example, which are the books generator. And since we have bookshelves, and also we want the books to scatter around all over our environment, we want the books to be generated vertically and also horizontally, randomized in scale and also in rotation. And we also have developed procedural texture generation tools. And we take wall texture as an example. By tweaking several parameters, we can change the texture to cater our project requirements. And we're also using the feature called vertex paint so that we can at most blend 3 materials at most on one single asset so that we can create more genuine look on different assets. And we are also using Lumen, a real-time lighting system inside Unreal Engine to help us enhance our lighting performance inside our environment. As you can see on the screen, the comparison that the change is very huge. And next we will talk about the character.
So here's a 2D concept of the monsters design. And we want to avoid it from the Universal's movie stereotype, and we want to stick to the original novel. So we need to bear in mind that the doctor created a creature intended to be a perfect human, but it ended up like a monster. Also, the doctor should be proud of his creature at first.
So for the doctor's character design, we conceive that he is a math scientist and also want to add some alchemy elements because his attempts to create life is somewhat similar to alchemist. After the first character design was finished, we found it didn't match the environment very well since the coat was too military. Then we sketched 2 more clothes designs, one with an apron and the other with some belts to carry his experimental equipment. We finally choose the apron one because it looks better suited for some dirty jobs, such as dismembering human bodies.
So based on the character concept, we modeled and sculpted the character in the shoes in Maya and ZBrush. And we also developed the character's apparel in Marvelous Designer, which will be brought into Unreal Engine for the real-time cloth simulation. So here are our next steps. We're in week 7 right now, and we will proceed to character rigging, texturing, sound design, animation, and the final render for the rest of the semester. So to summarize it, we're creating a 2-minute length 3D animation tailored for the panoramic screen and 3D stereo glasses. We are targeting the general public that is not prone to motion sickness. And for the guests, there will be 4 guests in the room, and they will be standing at the center of cavern. And this is designed based on the space within cavern. So this is the end of our presentation. Thank you. Now we're open to questions.
I have a bunch of questions. Let me think of which one I want to ask. It seems like creating a story in this space is uniquely challenging. You're doing a lot of kind of trucking shots in and out, but have you explored hard cuts as well, or other shots that will help you keep the pace of the story moving?
So like we have these plans, but haven't been adopted yet. So like currently we are just using one continuous shot for the whole story that get the whole narrative done. But we're also planning to have different kind of compositions, the camera setting at different angles to help us to do the narrative. Because like for the current stage, putting the main focus always in the center could be boring to some people, and also we are not fully utilizing the whole screen. That's the feedback we got, and we also have the plan to try different kind of camera perspectives and also the composition to try to play around with the screen better.
I'm sorry, are you not done?
Go ahead.
All right, so I have a quick question. The voiceover narration, is that just a scratch track, or is that the whole VO?
That's the first version of the narrative. We iterate that a little bit, but like it will pretty much similar to this one you're hearing to. And we're also it's not the final background music. We're actually making the music along with.
I'll ask another question. I'm skeptical that you'll be able to pull off the non-monster character doing. It's a lot of animation. It's like a oneer, which makes it even trickier. Meaning, like you have to just animate like a constant shot, right? Do you need that character, or is there, maybe there's a clever way to like pull that character off, or the actions you need that character to do? Have you thought about this?
We actually have the monster character. As you can see in the animatic, like the opening scene, it's right now within the water tank. We will not rig the monster, but we will just, the non-monster, we will rig him.
So like we definitely consider like the technical difficulties. We have so many animations that are going to be happening on the doctor himself, and we are trying to like using something that's obstacles that try to block its animation. For example, the railings on the stairs, and also like the tables around the environment. And the main animation for the character will be mainly for just like a walking cycle, and also him climbing up the stairs. These are the main animation he will be doing. And there will be like one main animation he is going to act as like he chopping off human bodies, and that will be like something that might be a little bit more complex, but we definitely have considered like trying to decrease the amount of animation we're going to be produced using this character. So yeah, we have been considering that. Yeah, but if the time is really like very tight, we definitely are going to like try to use some hard cuts, as you have mentioned, to try to minimize the workload. Yeah, sure.
Hello, everyone. We're Team Palooza, and we're working on the social trust party game. Our client is Elaine Fath from the Center for Transformational Play, and our consultant is past ETC alum, Ferris Elrays. And then also we have a funder, Peter Kaufman, who helped to form this problem statement to develop a game prototype to reorient college students away from mindset of work and getting ahead at the expense of everything else towards mindsets that lead to a more whole and balanced life. So as a team, we were like, how are we going to help students have a more whole and balanced life with a 10-minute party game? So we thought back on when we first started college and some of the things that we dealt with. And one of the things that we found was that how important community was and the success for our academic journey. So that is something that we wanted to explore about how we go from starting our program to being very busy with our schoolwork. And then if you don't have that balance of with your community, that you can end up feeling very isolated and alone. So, and then we have the research that backs that up saying that there's a decrease in your community that can also really affect your mental health. So with that in mind, we formed this, using the transformational framework, we formed this high-level purpose, is to help facilitate personal connections between new students to spark friendship and encourage social community support, and leading to a more whole and balanced life.
And since we are creating a social trust party game, we kick off the brainstorming by playing some reference games that we get suggestions from our teammates and also Professor Brenda, as you can see from the slides. So we actively play these games, and we are trying to figure out what are the key features making this game interesting, and we are trying to infuse those features into our games as inspirations. So after an intensive brainstorming stage, we figured out we want to have two phases in our games. The first one is the question phase, which is designed around having 3 levels of questions and help players share information with each other. We also want to create great questions that inspire great responses. The second phase will be the game phase, where the players need to pay attention to what other players have shared before, and they will play and work together to accomplish a certain goal in the gameplay. So our audience will be college students, and this game will be played at orientation to help them set up for success and work-life balance in the future. And use case would be, imagine you just got accepted to Carnegie Mellon or EDC program. It's the first day of school. You were excited during the break, but at the first day, you just get thrown into a random room with a random bunch of people who you have absolutely no idea about who they are. You feel shy, you feel nervous, you feel a little bit weird, and you're not quite sure what to do to get familiarized with other people and make connections. So the game will be used as an orientation activity that orientation leader steps in and suggests that this will be an icebreaker game, and students can scan the QR code and download the game. And they have players have to find their team by entering the code given by the orientation leader, and the game will separate students into a group of 4 randomly, and they have to find their team members, do a self-introduction, and start the game. Cici will talk more about how the game looks like.
Okay, so now the players are entering the question phase. We have different questions for each player each round, and then 4 questions each level. So in total, they'll have 3 levels in our game. And then each player will get 1 different question. On the screen, we have 4 questions for level 1. They are very basic questions, and then we ask about like the favorite season, type of drink people like the most, and snacks at midnight, and most they will like. So yeah, so now you can see this is player A's turn. This person will select an answer, and the rest of the other players will guess what the person wants to be as an animal. And then after they're all done with choosing and guessing, we also have an answer revealing part, which we ask player A to explain why she chose for that question. And then player A should also explain the reason to the other players. Yeah, you may wonder why we have the guessing part for other players. So based on the research, we learned that people may have two systems in their brain when they're thinking about questions. The first one is system one thinking. It is a really fast, unconscious, and stereotype thinking, and then people may trigger some judgments. So when they are guessing for each other, they may probably have that thinking because they don't know each other, they are strangers, they are at the first day of orientation. And then this is why explanation part is needed for our game. We ask player A to explain why she chose or he chose the question because it may trigger people's system two thinking, which is individualization. It is a slow, conscious, and stereotype or bias prevention thinking. So when the other player are listening to player A's explanation, they may start to learning about that person more, and then it is more about the personal learning for each other. And then for further phases, we may have level 2 and level 3 questions, which may involve more personal and ask the players to share more information about their personal stuff. Yeah, and then as you can see, after player A chose a dog for the question, the dog will show up in the shared game environment. So for each question, what the players chose will always show up in the game environment.
Stands for C. So after entering the game state, there will be 4 players, which listed on the ground, like capture like little guys standing in the middles, and for chosen items like the dogs, which the player A's chosen, and also like the 4 different players' homes, which represent the place that you have to push the items back. So the major gameplay is about pushing the items, if you can remember which items belongs to, back to the corresponding home. For example, in our previous speech mentioned that player A chose a dog, so the 4 little guys collaborate with each other to push the dog back to the portals, back to the player's A's home. And the other items are dodging and running away from them in the scene. So there will be a 2 minutes time limit for that, and within 2 minutes you have to push all the items back to the corresponding home. So after you finish the 1 level, there will be another 2, and there will be deeper questions which reflecting more personalities and preference. And after playing this 2 rounds, you will have an ice cream as a reward. So with more levels up, which means there will be more items and more challenging tasks for you to accomplish. So after finish all of that, you will get global rewards as an ice cream. So all in all, how our games actually articulates the importance of knowing each other. So if you analyze the cognitive process of knowing each other, it's have 2 circles. The first one is a self-disclosure, which means encourage people to share more information about themselves. And another circle is about perceiving and memorizing. It's about remember what have other people said. So in our games, we have 2 phases, the question phase and the game phase, which creates a prompt to let people to share, and also have the matching games which help people to memorize. So in next part, Regina will talk about art and tech production.
Thank you. And for the art style, our group is very greatly inspired by an artist called Mac, and who is very famous for his cartoonish and a low pony art style. And we decided to make our game to be very easy to read since our game is on mobile. And second is we want our color to be very playful and also colorful to create a sense of party game vibe. So overall, our art style will be clear, vibrant, and cute, and fun to watch. So this is our current art production process. The top lineup is the drafts that we create. And the second one, and next step is the refined design with more details add-on. And the third step is to make an all to 3D. And our final product will be all 3D.
Next, let's look at our tech production overview. So it can be categorized into 3 parts. First, the platform that we're deploying our game on, and our currently working prototype, and our network progress. So during quarters, we're asked these questions a lot. So why are we actually using tech? Here's some of the various reasons for that. First of all, we're making a mobile game, so it's very easy for game distribution. Players would just download to their own devices and play. It is very portable, so they do not need a table or any physical device to actually play. And also, on our end, it's very convenient for us to put players into groups. Games also provide very strong visuals and real-time feedback so that we can use it to provide memorable and very strong experience for the players. So to summarize a little bit, we're making an online multiplayer experience. It's going to be on the mobile platforms, and we are currently developing towards an iOS build, and we'll extend it to Android after we finish our iOS development. The game is also going to be in top-down fixed camera angle so that all the players will look at the same environment. So during their discussions, they will be on the same page and have the same view. Next, I'll hand to Shuwei to talk about our game prototype.
Okay, so game prototype. After finishing our core design in week 5, we started to develop the digital prototype. Before the half, we faced 2 significant tech challenges. In the first review, you might see that white objects are wandering randomly in the map, and they are avoiding colliders, blocks, obstacles, and also each other, so that they could be herded by the players successfully. The second GIF shows 2 players playing their games on 2 different PCs. So it's kind of achieve the functions of how online multiple player system work. And you can see 2 white cubes are collaborating and herd the white object into the black hole. That's what it shows. So for the next step, we're gonna do a lot of playtest iterations and also have multiple new map designs so that the game could be much more collaborative. And we are also going to have new oppositions and mechanics so that we can elevate the interest level of the game. And in the end, we're gonna start iOS development right away after the half. And if we have time, we'll also take a look at Android development. And Luca will talk more about how the online network can work.
So we want to bring every player together on their own devices. That's why we want to deploy this for the multiplayer games. And we use Miro as the tool to build the networking in Unity because it is free and it is well designed and it has a good community supported. And for the server side, we decided to use Microsoft Play Fab because it's very good to fit into our game scope for playtesting.
As for, we carry out 2 playtests. The first one is about guessing, like each other picking different items for other people. But we find as for strangers, it's pretty challenging. People are shy to speak, and they don't have the basic information to make a guess. Second one is our current design is getting much better because people pick their questions they want to answer. And also, like, the experience actually enhances the memory process. So, conclusion.
Here's the summary. We want the college students starting a new game and help them facilitate connections between to spark friendships and encourage a social support community leading to a more whole and balanced life. And how are we doing this? Is through a mobile game that everyone asking questions and sharing their feelings and answers so they can know each other much better after playing the game. Thank you.
Is there, oh. Yes.
Okay,
Two questions. One, your art style. I really like your art style, but have you tested it with your target audience to make sure that it's the right art style to connect with them? Just some questions about that. And so you wanted to facilitate connections. How are you guys going to determine success in that? Yeah.
I have a quick answer for this art style design because, like, first we didn't carry out the playtest for testing our art style, but we decided this art type for Generation Z because for most of them it's like Y2K generation. They're already getting into the campus or getting a job interview. So the possibility is the largest group that we're gonna cover. So for this group of people, we think our style that may fit in their test. But we haven't carried out the playtest, and we will carry it out later. Thank you.
For the player feedback, like how do we determine whether they are forming connection? We're thinking doing surveys, basically, to see whether the players feel closer relationship with each other and whether they are more willing to form connection in the future with other strangers or their other unknown classmates.
So to get to your goal, you can stay away from really dropping into the system one type thinking and stereotypes. For example, asking about what would your pet be instead of what animal would you be is staying less into that system one thinking. And it seems your goal doesn't really want you dropping into that sort of possible conflict. So I'm just curious about your question design. Why do you want to push people into that system one thinking, which it might go counter to your goal?
To answer that question, we are thinking it's not like pushing people to answer to trigger system one thinking, but it's a more natural way of when people are meeting with someone new and then they don't know each other. They may, like in their mind, they may have some stereotype or biased thinking just based on the gender, race, some physical appearances. But like after they getting to know each other with level 2 and level 3 questions, they will start to know each other more deeply as a person.
You understand, asking what pet would you have versus what animal are you?
Yeah. We will adjust the questions more during the future developments. Yeah.
And I think adding to that is we also want our choice to somehow reflects our personalities. So answering more like which animals can better represent you, or like which one you want to be, is kind of a way to explain what type of person or some good traits that you want to share with other people. So, yeah, like Cici said, we will polish our question to be more,
We're also considering maybe using like a time limit of how much time that they're asked to speak about why they chose this choice, to kind of help people maybe to explain more about why they feel like this is the right choice for them, to maybe reveal more personal kind of like information so they can like learn about each other. But we definitely know that like getting the questions right is going to be really important for like the success of this game for sure.